Well, yeah, I can pray for.
All right.
I can pray for us, no problem. I didn't
I
claim to, but hey.
We are live.
Hey, yeah.
Good evening, friends, on this wonderful Thursday. This is the day that the Lord has made, and we shall indeed rejoice and be glad in it. And it is such an honor and such a privilege to be with you once again. And today we are talking about a topic that is of grave importance. It's such a norm for us as women to talk about being single parents. And we hardly ever talk about co-parenting from the other perspective. And the other perspective I'm talking about from the father's perspective. It is so easy, and it has become such a norm for us to say men are trash, our fathers are not available and they're not present for their kids. But today we are so privileged to have a friend and a brother who is willing to talk to us about the story from the other side, which is co-parenting from the father's perspective. And before I introduce our guest, we have one of our own, Mkhulu Makhanya. I feel also honored to call him Mkhulu Makhanya because at some point I used to call him Mpho and he used to call me Ausislai. I'm not even sure how that changed, but hey, you know what? God works in mysterious ways and we are always open to the works of God. Abutimpo, how are you doing?
I'm happy, thank you. How are you? I'm living the dream.
Aye, Bona, every day, all day. It is so good to have you online. Could you please do us the honors of opening this session for us with a prayer?
Okay, cool. Let's just close our eyes and pray. Blessed Creator, loving Father, loving Mother, we come before you this evening in thanksgiving and gratitude for your love, your care and compassion. And so, Mudimo Mutswadi wa rona ya halalelang, as we gather under the theme of exploring the meaning of co-parenting, its effects on our lives, and perhaps to seek wisdom and formulas that can help us build meaningful and sustainable relationships. We call upon your divine name. We call upon the Holy Spirit to come and be with us. We ask, beloved Father, that your presence may shed some light in instances where perhaps we need to be encouraged, we need to be inspired to be more loving, more peaceful, more understanding, and more patient. So we ask that if your Spirit in any way is able to convict us of our ignorance and sin, through this prayer, we seek to say we are available to be led, we are available to be empowered in order for us to grow. And so we give thanks for this moment of prayer. We give thanks for this moment of gathering with these beautiful and wonderful souls who have grown up under your hand and care. And so, Mdimo Arona, we look forward to hearing what you seek to say to us through Brother Mandla. And so we give thanks. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. And amen. Thank you so much, Abudimpo. So friends, I'm hoping that during the prayer you were busy gathering your friends, your relatives, also gathering the person that you have had the privilege of making a baby with or a child with, gathering parents who sometimes come in between you and that person that you have had the privilege of having a baby with, so that both of you can come in and learn and also understand the other side and understand each one's side as far as parenting is concerned. Friends, it is such an honor and a privilege for me to introduce to you Brother Mandla Magagula, who is a 42-year-old father to a 12-year-old son who was previously married. And he was a part, and dare I say, an active part of the Wesley Guild in the Soshanguve circuit, and which is in the Limpopo district. Was an active member and held various leadership positions of responsibility between the years of 1995 and the year 2006. Mandla currently works for a global technology and e-commerce company, and he resides in Gauteng. He spent some of his time as a volunteer and facilitator for an NPO that focuses on gender-based violence and gender sensitivity programs. Mandla is passionate about promoting healthy interpersonal relations and positive, brave, and progressive parenting. And I'm also proud to mention that Mandla and I were members of the Wesley Guild around the same time in the same era, and it gives me such great pleasure to welcome you, Abud Mandla, to the session. How are you?
I am good, Selailo. How are you doing?
I'm very well. I'm very well. Thank you. I know we've been talking about this topic and it has been a long time coming. Finally, we are here.
Yeah, finally, we are here. We've made time for it. And I must say, I am obviously privileged, I'm happy, and I'm excited that Wesley Guild SA page, through obviously your leadership and your input, is brave enough to kind of have this conversation about parenting and about what do we do in this ever dynamic and ever changing world. It's not rosy. And we need to adjust as we go along for us to achieve what we really want to achieve. But I'm proud that we are having kind of this necessary conversation and saying, you know, as men, what is our perspective to this thing? So thank you. I think I'm going to maybe let me start and outline some of the thoughts and perhaps some of the drama that goes into this thing. And it's also interesting that, you know, in co-parenting, you are forever dealing with something. You are forever dealing with something. And when you think you've figured it out, it comes back at you and it shows you different things because there are just so many things in parenthood. Yeah. Our parents didn't want us, you know?
Look, when we started this conversation, I said to you, you guys didn't want me because yeah. I am a first-time parent to a 14-year-old. And every day I know that we are dealing with things. You know, we are dealing with mindsets we were never ready for. We are dealing, because we've never been here before. And so have you. You know, you have never been here before. So here we are today, our parents. But do you think our parents would have warned us enough, though?
You know, our parents tried. I think they tried. And I think the thing about youth is that as young people, we are very naive. We're very naive and we approach things in a certain way. And there's just no level of preparation around some of the things that happen. And it's fine. I mean, it's great as well that Mpho had to Mkhulu Makhanya opened with a prayer for us. And I mean, I remember him back in the day when we started in the Wesley Guild, 1995, and here we are adults. We are all adults and we are all grown up. I see Siyabulela Mayegiso here. I mean, I was at Siyabulela Mayegiso's, what do you call this? I was at his confirmation. So you know, we are talking in early teens, pre-teens, up until here. So I think one of the things that is always great about the Wesley Guild is that we can share what has happened in our journey and we can share amongst one another. And if we need to critique, we can critique fairly so. And we can also critique with a very sound spiritual eye, sound intellectual eye, and say, well, that's right, that's wrong, that needs to happen, and all of that. But I mean, I just want to maybe foreground our conversation, and let me take over from in a bit, and maybe just foreground what has been my own observations. And what are some of the challenges around co-parenting and what are we dealing with? So first and foremost, I think when people are talking about co-parenting, people are not necessarily talking about a mother and a father in a house where everyone, it's all good, you know, or everyone is working together. I think normally in these settings, when we are talking about co-parenting from a father's perspective, is when the relationship is over, when it's no longer romantic, you know, when we are no longer spending hours and talking to each other on the phone, when we are no longer going on dates, we've now got this child, whether we were married or we were in a long-term relationship. But the fact of the matter is that a relationship between the adults has ended. And I want to say that, I mean, when it happened to me 7 years ago, it was traumatic. The end of the relationship is traumatic. And as a man, no one asks you, how are you feeling? No one says as a man, what are you going through? Because you go through, well, I went through a sense of loss. I went through a sense of hurt. I went through a sense of doubt. I went through a sense of disillusionment with what is happening with what is going on at the moment. And as you go through that as a man, it's normal for people not to ask you, how are you doing? Are you okay? And the hurt that you're feeling at that moment. And so when you start the co-parenting journey, you're starting it from a point of pain and from a point of loss, that you've lost the relationship with the other person. You are now somehow expected to pick up the and the changes. There are changes that are going to happen. You suddenly no longer have the relationship, you no longer have the person. But what you do have is that you've got the child. You've got the child together, and what then do you do? And what happens is, in those dramatic moments when we lose the relationship, what are some of the things that we say to one another? What are the things that we do to one another that are going to affect the child, and we don't see it? So we get in these nasty battles. Sometimes people don't even go to nasty battles. Sometimes people just do the silent treatment. You know, a person will give you a silent treatment for 2 or 3 days. And all you want to do is when you want to speak to the child. So we move from a functional environment to a slightly tumultuous environment. And sometimes it can be dysfunctional. And what is the impact of that on the child? It doesn't matter how old the child is, but what is the impact on the child? And we forget some of the sweet things that we said about each other and to the child as well. And we forget all of that, and we throw all of that away. And suddenly, sometimes if you have not, as a Black man, if you're not paid lobola, your supposed in-laws are going to remind you, ukuthi ndoda awuhlawulanga. And because awuhlawulanga, you're not going to have access to the child. And they now suddenly maybe might want to, rightfully or wrongfully so, they might want to change your child's surname. And they say, you didn't do what you needed to have done. And all those things are going to affect the child. You know, you now have to explain to a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old child to say, hey, chief, we need to change your surname. Why? Because Gogo says so, or because Mkulu says so. All right. So what are your rights as a father in the traditional sense? What are your rights as a father in the legal sense? That when you go to court, what rights can you enforce? And here's the thing. We don't live in a courtroom. We don't live in a courtroom. So you are not always able to enforce your rights. If your co-parent has switched off the phone for the weekend, he or she is away elsewhere, because people rebound and they move on elsewhere very quickly sometimes. If that person has moved on, what are your rights to visitation of the child? In other words, continuing the relationship with the child. And what are your rights in terms of if you want to maintain primary custody of the child. What are your rights around that? And sometimes, can you navigate that? Do you have the money to fight that? If her family says, no, we want to change this child to our surname, and yeah, no, we see what you've paid, but we're not happy what you've paid. You know? Because you didn't slaughter that goat. Therefore, this is what is happening. So my perspective as a man is that I've somehow got to navigate those things. And I somehow have to be emotionally intelligent enough. And I want to move to the stage of talking about emotional intelligence. This space requires you to have a level of emotional intelligence. Okay? Dealing with your co-parent, dealing with her family, dealing with your family, and dealing with the child. Okay? And say, let me just not be emotionally reckless. Let me be intelligent about what I need to do. And let me hold myself responsible to say, what kind of parent would I want? What would I want my father to do if I was a child? And a lot of instances, we don't think about the child. And as fathers, I dare say that some of the fathers that I've encountered, there is a temptation to walk away. There is a temptation to walk away and to say, this is difficult because you're navigating. They're now going to tell you that you need maybe an exorbitant amount of money for maintenance. Look, children need money. Children need money. But suddenly you're having a money conversation. So sometimes, because it's not just a money conversation, but it's an emotional conversation because there are other things that are happening in the background. What ought to be 4,000 rands a month doesn't become 4,000 rands a month. It becomes 6, because they know that this brother has got a bit of money, he works for this company, and he can afford it. They think he can, they know your pay slip, Akira. They know the bank statement, So they're going to hit you with that. And we need to have those conversations to say, and when you have the child, just as a man as well, measure how much is the child. What are the expenses that the child has to on a monthly basis, on a daily basis? So when people start saying they need an X amount of money, you can say no, but that is too much. Okay. So when we navigate that, it is also important to go for professionals. Have professionals. Have, if you can, draw up a parental plan to say, me and you, this is what we're doing. I know it is hard because at that stage, we also might not be talking to one another. But let's have a family lawyer, have a family plan and say, let's write it down. Let's agree. Okay. And let's navigate that situation. Let's have an elder or two or somebody else. And right now, Sililo, we are the elders. So let's help other people navigate those difficult situations as well. To say, for the sake of the child, what are we doing for the sake of the child? All right. And there's also that dynamic between if a man doesn't have enough money or is unemployed. The unemployment rate at the moment, I think, is anywhere between 38% to 40%. And most of it, they say it's youth unemployment. And when they say it's youth unemployment, they are really mentioning people between the age of 18 and 40, that it's 40% unemployment there. So if you're a father or you've got children and you don't have enough money or you don't have money at all, and you're relying on a 350 rand that comes from government, what tends to happen sometimes is that people say, we're not going to give you access to the child because you're not giving us money. And they become a judge and a prosecutor in a case. And they think that they're dealing with you, but they're hurting the child. And sometimes you're just a positive influence on a child and you have the legal right to have access to your child. But because you don't have money, they come at you about the issues that failed in the relationship. Okay. And they don't say, yeah, but he was a horrible partner, but is he a good parent? And we've got to discuss parenting plans and parenting values. What kind of values do you want to instill with your child? And we never discuss that, but we've got to discuss it. I know the church that normally, you know, we bring kids for baptismal and we go through baptismal class. It would be lovely for you to go with your co-parent to a baptismal class if the relationship is soured at that stage, as part of a conversation about what kind of child do you want to raise, in what kind of community will we raise this child, and ultimately what kind of country do we want to have. We can't complain about crime, about drug abuse, about all these other things, We can't complain about them, but we raise children in dysfunctional environments. So we can't look away when we see co-parents fighting. And people fight, you see it on social media, someone, co-parent, right on social media. And we all come and we add fuel to the fire. And we don't say to them, hey, but there is FAMSA, there are social workers, let's talk to your family. Hey, man, comrade, you can't do that publicly. You know, you've got a child. And I mean, you're going to raise a child as long as they're alive, you're going to be in their life. So us as a community as well, I always talk about this point I want to make, that as fathers, as uncles, as friends, as brothers, when they know that my relationship with Selaelo has ended, people need to ask me, Mandla, and say, where's the child? How are you parenting the child, Mandla, as a man? So as men, we need to hold each other accountable. Because if I'm not holding Paul accountable to a certain standard of fatherhood, and I'm saying to him, and if he says to me, but they're denying me access, and I'm saying, Chief, what have you done about it? What have you done about the access issue? And he says, I don't know what to do about it. And say, okay, have you had a family meeting? I guess we love family meetings because we're South Africans. Have you had a family meeting? Have you tried to resolve it in that sense? And if as a family you've failed, what are the legal avenues that you've tried? Have you sent a letter to these people? And if they're saying you're not a responsible father, maybe you drink too much, can't you have maybe a chaperone on someone who's going to monitor you? Wabon, someone in the middle, and you just take a child out to something nice, to the park, to zoo, to wherever, just something nice. What tends to happen at the moment is sometimes we see people at filling stations, you know, people stop at filling stations and they are passing along the children. And you are asking yourself, these are going to be kids who are they're growing up being passed around in filling stations. And then we get surprised when we have children that don't have the right values, who don't forgive each other, who don't have proper interpersonal skills and all of that. So from a father's perspective, I say, look, the ending of the relationship hurts me too. But I need my brothers to support me in the collapse of relationships, to support me, and not to say, hey, let's drink it away. Not to say, hey, let's rebound, mfana, find somebody else, but to say, let us, now that that relationship has ended, how do we recover after the breakdown? And we need to recover the relationship with the child and make sure that we protect the children. You see what I'm saying? Because and further than that, what kind of family structure and family tree are we going to have? If we have a dotted line relationship with other children, but other children, we have a direct access to them. And we need to monitor, but as brothers, like I say, as brothers, as friends, as uncles, we need to call our brothers and say to them, where's the child? When we meet in family gatherings and say, hey, and how are things going? And we know that people can be irresponsible. We know, and it's easy to take sides to say, hey, that woman is emotional and she's angry, and she has a right to be angry. If you did her dirty, she has a right to be angry. But when as a man, if you know maybe that you've done wrong, what are you going to do to fix this thing? But you start doing it with a child. And if you promise a child that you're going to do this, you need to follow up. But don't be clouded by emotions that sometimes are not intelligent enough. Don't be clouded by that. Be responsible. Think about the child. And if you need to apologize and say, hey, no, but, obviously don't overdo it. Acknowledge what you need to acknowledge, but we move on. But at the end of the day, when the money is due, and now maybe I also need to address it, that there are sometimes our brothers take take it a bit too far. I know that the madam is not working, and I'm providing. So I'm expecting that every time I provide it, I come and I pick up the child, or I come see the child. I'm going to abuse my position because I'm the ex. So we also need to check ourselves to say, no, I'm not only going to support my child or do maintenance for my child when things are rosy, or if she does certain favors for me. People say, no, your ex-wife is angry. No, just give her 1 or 2, she'll be fine. And they know what I'm talking about. And that culture needs to stop as well. We need to focus and be about the child and be responsible. Because like I say, we are raising a generation of children that are going to hold us accountable, that are really going to hold us accountable and say, where were you as my father? And you can't say I'll disappear for 5 years, for 10 years, and I'll come back later. It's not the right way of doing things. And if you've got questions, you're more than welcome to basically do a paternity test. You're more than welcome to say, I'm not too sure, or hey, suddenly this forehead or this nose is not a Makakula nose or forehead. You have a right to say, no, let me go and do a paternity test. And you do the paternity test and you convince yourself, no, this is really my child. But ultimately, the child should never suffer. No child should suffer because the parents don't get along. That's my take on it.
So thank you so much, Abuti Mandla, for your submission. And I am so grateful that you have actually set the tone for the conversation and you have opened up things that I also personally want to talk about. One of the things that I think we need to acknowledge as a people is the fact that the minute we talk about parenting, and I'm agreeing with you on this one, it's because the romantic relationship between partners has ended.
Yeah.
And I want us to acknowledge the trauma. We always, as women, because we talk. Rena, the nice thing about us is that we talk about it, we cry together, we do all sorts of things together as women in order to help each other heal.
Yeah.
I am not sure if the same happens for men, because the ending of a romantic relationship is not only traumatic for women, it is also traumatic for men.
Yeah.
Because as a man, you did not enter into that marriage or that relationship with the hope of one day divorcing. So how do we now become, all of us, both men and women, how do we become a safe space for men who are divorced, for men who are separated, for men who are no longer in a romantic relationship, especially where there are kids? Or kids who are born out of that relationship. So that's my first question. How do we all become a safe space for you and every man who is like you? Secondly, the brotherhood. You mentioned the brotherhood. Abud Mandla, I can tell you now, I hear it a lot from my circles. And also the fact that because that one relationship has ended, I get another one to get over that one.
Yeah.
So men are also not giving each other enough time and opportunity to mourn the end of that particular relationship.
Yeah.
Because when you lose someone, sorry, I'm going to give you now. When you lose someone, especially if it's someone that you loved, you had made plans for and with, you saw yourself growing old together. Now all of a sudden you have lost that person, and maybe, God forbid, you have lost them also as a friend. You can't be friends anymore. Now, one of our brothers, Unomkebo Ndimande, is saying there's bickering. Now, all of a sudden, there's bickering about anything and everything. So how do we become a safe space for you?
Sure. Okay. So I normally just say, considering maybe what I've gone through is, I mean, I would say, firstly, if you're employed, you're very lucky. If you're employed in South Africa at the moment, you're very lucky. And if you've got medical aid, you're very lucky. So start by utilizing those particular services. I mean, a lot of companies have got employee assistance programs. So start by going to your company employee assistance program, asking for professional help and professional counseling. And sometimes as men, we don't want to do that because we think, it's not gonna work. What I always, and we don't want to talk, what I always say is that if you go to a dentist because you need to double check your teeth after a few years, if you go to optometrist because you need to make sure that your eyes are okay after a few years, for your emotional well-being, you also need to check in your emotions and just go in there and say, I don't know, but let's chat. This is what has happened over the last 2 years, 3 years, a year, and let's talk. So professional assistance for me is a key thing. If you don't have access to those healthcare services, I always say, just go to a clinic, try to get a social worker, try to get a psychologist. But I think over and above that, I think because we are also on the page of the church, let's go to our ministers for a level of pastoral care. What we tend not to do, we tend not to go to our pastors or our ministers, our stewards, when relationships are sour. We tell them when we want to get married and when we want to baptize, but we don't tell them when things are hard and say, hey, pray for me. This is what is going on and this is what I'm dealing with. So there's that level. And how do we become a safe space for one another? I think it's a question of firstly listening, because sometimes people just want to listen and offload. So just be able to listen. Just be there and listen. There's a text in the Bible, Sister Selailo, where Job's friends, Job loses all these things, and the Bible says, and Job's friends he came through and they sat with him and they sat in silence. We need our friends to sit in silence with us when we go through difficult situations. Not to be quick to say things, but sit in silence and for us to say as much as we want what we want to say. And I think the other one is obviously do no harm after that. Once we've listened, do no harm. Don't say harmful things. Don't say harmful things about the other woman. Don't say harmful things about the other brother. Don't say harmful things about whatever. And let's be as constructive as possible. And I think the last one, it's a level of confidentiality. If Sister Selailo comes to me and says, oh, this is the issue that I'm having or that I've dealt with, if you know that your chest is not the kind of chest that keeps people's secrets, just say, no. Don't talk to me, But if you know that obviously you awahatiwas fubeng, as they say, then meaning for my Zulu friends, meaning guti unesfuba uyakwazi ukuthi ulalele, you can listen. Yeah. Then by all means listen and keep people's things. But I think after a while as well, just pick up the phone after a week or a month or so and say, hey, you were not okay. How far are you doing right now as a brother? Yeah. Rather than suggesting some of these things that I see people do and people suggest. And it's not just brothers only, but yeah, I have seen some sisters as well suggesting to say, Chomi, man,
I know.
Yeah. So, and people don't mourn losses. And when you don't mourn losses, you carry a sense of grief. So today you lose this, tomorrow you lose that. It's all these accumulative losses. Yeah. And we end up being very empty and resentful. So what you don't want is when you come and you approach a child with all of that resentment, because ultimately you're still a parent. You're still a parent, and children just want to know they want to be seen, they want to be played with, they want to know that they're special, they want to be protected. And how do you do all of this protection and this parenting when you are fighting the world, when you are answering 1,000 calls from these new people, when you're dealing with a hangover, and all of that, when you're dealing with hangover, when you're dealing with drugs, because that's how you're dealing with your stress, you're dealing with your loss. There is just a healthy way of dealing with some of the losses that we encounter.
Sure. Yeah, that is so true. Thank you. And we are so quick to give advice, instead of being present. One of the things I've learned a few years ago with regards to marriage, and I know we're not talking about marriage now, but was I created for myself and for my friends, a safe space whereby when they're going through the most, they're able to knock at my house. They don't have to tell me anything. There is a bedroom in my house specifically for everyone. Then a friend can just go straight to that bedroom, close the door and sleep, or get in that bedroom and cry. And I won't ask them anything. When they wake up, whether it's the same day,
sorry about Taban.
So when a person wakes up, whether it's the same day or the following day, they have the right to just say, thanks, friend, and walk out and go. So I know that I have been a safe space, and I really wish that even for co-parents, we can be that much of a safe space. I want us to talk about toxic cultural behaviors that can happen from families.
Yeah.
You mentioned that they can say, look, you were married, fine, you were recognized as the son on the other side, and your wife was recognized as the daughter from this side. Now, 7 years later, the marriage dissolves, and then there are children in the mix.
Correct.
Now, some families, and I'm not even sure if that's what happened, and please let me just make a disclaimer here. We are not here to talk about the families and bash different families, and we're not bashing your in-laws or your ex-in-laws. Please let us know so that we continue to respect the families, because they're not here to speak up.
Absolutely.
So now, for another father, the families might say, actually, no safes. I'm not going to have access to the children. Actually, last week, our child came with a blue eye, or whatever happened. Therefore, you are not going to have access to the child. Actually, now as the mother as the grandmother of the child, I demand that you pay an X amount to maintain the child. I don't care what my daughter says. She's emotional. She's whatever I am saying. And therefore, unless these things are done my way as the grandfather or the grandmother or Rakhadwangana, think you will not have access to the child. How do we deal with toxic cultural traits?
Sure. I think we've got to, my take on it is, and I think I was very fortunate. I was really, really, really very fortunate that I've got fantastic, what do you call this, parents, in-laws. I really have I've got a great relationship with them. I can pick up the phone and I can have a conversation to say, this is what I'm going through, and they're very understanding and they're great. What I've advised other people to do around culture and around traditions and so forth is, in fact, there was a minister that I approached in 2005 when I wanted to get married. And in that Methodist minister said to me, Mandla, make sure that culturally you do what is right for that family. Okay? Meaning he acknowledged that as much as he is a Methodist minister, there are certain things traditionally and culturally that need to be done for that particular family. So I always say that don't also, how can I say, dismiss the other side when they want to say what they want to say. If you do feel that they are taking you for a ride, have a discussion with your own family. And your own family is going to say, and I mean, as Black people, your own family is going to say, well, that happens or that doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. And form a delegation with your own people to say, okay, me and as co-parents, if we're not agreeing, we will come as a Makakula family and we will discuss this with you. All right. Yeah. So that we find one another. All right. And a lot of people, what they do is that they give up. So it becomes a broken telephone. And some of them could be toxic. They could be toxic traits. But when you get your delegation together, and you need to tell your delegation to say, don't get there and disrespect them. You know, these are the things that I want to achieve. These are the things I want us to respect them. And I want to have access to my child, and I want to bring up my child. And these are the things that I need, and let's talk as families. Because you've got to remember that that child is not going to grow up in a vacuum. That child belongs in a certain community, in a certain family. And we are just not individuals as Africans. We form part of families. And you also don't want your child to be isolated for whatever reason. If they're doing certain things there, they say, we're not including you for these reasons. So I always say, have a dialogue, a very friendly dialogue. And people must tell you, if they say in vendor culture, there are 10 cows that get slaughtered for their child. It needs to be supported. They mustn't take you for a ride. It's a style. Sorry to use the words, but it's a style. So so if you have elders in your family in your corner and you go over there, you negotiate these things and you say, no, right, or let's fix this because there are children in the mix, and let's hold each other accountable to certain standards and certain things. And I always say, just commit to something as a man. Sometimes as men, we don't commit to something. So commit to something and say, now I commit to these things that need to be done. I will do this. But so that they know that you are serious. And when you get there, you say, this is what I will do. And Lebona, they can understand, okay, no, but this man is being very fair, and this family is being very fair. Yeah, mara we can work with them. And it's that kind of thing where let's work together, because ultimately we've got children in the mix. And those people, I want to say as well, that if you have so-called, we call each other baby daddies and baby mamas. Those are the terms that we use. If we've got someone who is not coming to the party, also use the delegation and go to someone's family and knock there. And and remind them, remind them ever so often, or no, you guys owe us, and you have not done right by us in terms of what you needed to do. I think a lot of us get tired. Our sisters get tired, unfortunately, and I think people get tired. But it's the legal right it's the legal privilege of the child for them to have a present parent, and B, to get as much financial resources as they can. It's not about us, it's about the child. So, but I always say, have your family in your corner, or have some people in your corner, not even elders at our level, because we're elders now, even elders at our level, and knock on certain doors and say, we want to fix things, and this is what we're committing to. And that's how we build families, and that's how we build people. To say, even though things have collapsed, we go there with an idea to say we are building, and a ravotana to say, let's go and fix this thing. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Abuti Majela Mkize is saying via kutuza. So in relation to sometimes the other side, basically they are not building a relationship here, Mara, but like the idea of some kutuza, you know what I mean? The one thing my family does, which I absolutely admire and I respect, and I did exactly what that minister, I don't know which minister it is, but when I was about to get married, my family was in turmoil. So sometimes you as a man come into the family that is already in turmoil. Yeah. So you are facing people who are hurt, who are broken, who are going through traumas of their own, which you had nothing to do with. So now you come to the receiving end of that. So the one thing I prayed about, and the Spirit told me at the time, that do right by your ancestors.
Yes.
And that's what I said to my husband. I said, do right by my people, regardless of what they say. And he did. And thank God. I think, I'm not sure if it is, but I mean, here we are today. And I think that plays a very good role.
Yeah.
I want us to, as we converse, I want us to now and again bring in questions from our guilders on the page.
Absolutely.
And so Maditi says, I hope fathers are listening because it is a sad case. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And she's also agreeing to the counseling. Mampi is saying we don't want miserable comforters. Classic Goa, yes. And that is true. But sometimes you don't have to say anything about Goa. Just allow them to go, you know?
Yeah.
Umagandalo, Lord Jesus. And then my thing goes. Umagandalo said, please advise mothers on how to deal with baby daddies who are not cooperating with a co-parenting arrangement. Most women can raise children single-handedly, but deep down, they want their children to experience their life with their own fathers, with a present father, she says.
Yeah.
Ziko Nambali says, this is such an interesting topic, an eye-opener. We do things singayazi the negative impact ezizoyenza ebantwaneni and ke upbringing iziveza sele umuntu ehambe umgama omde.
Yeah.
And finally, I hope you're getting them.
I got you. I got them.
Okay. Finally, Usilumko Nzube says, we all need a friend to listen and sit in silence, less judgment, etc. Do not advise or be quick to make a comment where you do not know. Co-parenting needs common vision, no resentment. Let's not create a generation of anger or a generation with anger.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, thank you. You know, I am, the Western Cape has been good for you, Selailo. You can now read Xhosa. I am so proud of the Western Cape. It's done fantastic things. My word. Kurumota Pitora Avales Xhosa. So, I'm proud of the Western Cape. Super proud. Yeah, umgama omde. I saw that and I thought that was going to shake. I saw you reading umgama omde. I was like, yo, well done. I think there was one question about, I think as brothers. So I have a sister, and when my sister came to me and said, here is this chap and they want to do certain things, they're dating. You get closer and you ask certain questions as a brother to your sister. Yeah. And you say, how are things going? Are you okay? And all of that. So yeah. I think as brothers, we need to do that to our sisters and say, is it treating you well? Is everything going okay? All right. So when you start having nieces and nephews, you have a responsibility as an uncle. So you being an uncle doesn't start the day when people are getting lobola and they need whatever. No. Otoma oba malome before the child is born. And you've got to be a responsible uncle. And as a brother, you need to ask if things are going okay. So you're supporting your sister. So if her relationship collapses and doesn't go the way that it ought to go, you can step in there as a man and say, no, what is right by my sister must be done right. And what is right for my nieces and nephews ought to be done. And we need to hold each other accountable as families. And men in families and brothers and say, this is what is going on. And we need to, when we notice that our sisters are complaining about certain things, we must not enter these conversations with the idea of protecting the other brother. We must want to hear what our sister is going through. Because normally we just want to hear, no, but okay, yeah, but what did you do? We say, yeah, but what did you do? And we are not asking to say, okay, what's happening and all of that. So I always say, let us be responsible uncles, and let us just step in with the right kind of word in these instances. And as well, when you're noticing one of your other brothers not being responsible, we need to say, Kore, this is what is going on. It is true that on the opposite angle, like Mojalefa was saying, that maybe that people will want to take advantage of you. We need to call it into order when we see it, to say, Mara Chief, hey, this family, they want this much. And when we are doing maintenance, they also check if Mandla is earning an X amount of money and living a certain standard of life. Obviously, I cannot have my child living. If I'm earning 40,000 rands a month, for example, I cannot be sending 500 rands for my child. I can't be. That's irresponsible. That's really, 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 really irresponsible. In fact, what I need to be doing is that I need to be putting in more money because I want to elevate my child and I want my child to have all the things that are there. But I also need to be available. So it's really just that holding each other accountable. And a lot of our brothers were letting them, as friends, were letting them get away. As friends, as men, we're letting other men get away. And it's easy to say, Tao, they must understand. Tao, but you are drinking away a Tao in a week. It doesn't balance. It doesn't balance. So unfortunately for sisters and everybody, go back to your family. Go back to the family courts, unfortunately. And let's follow each other up and let's push each other. And umushapeka ganishi order yong, ummete yong, skamotloel. And it's those things. But I think emotionally, what tends to happen, let's also not emotionally abuse one another. So if he's not coming with money and he really doesn't have money, and he's a irresponsible person, give him access. If he's not abusive towards you, give him access to the child. Make it easy for the child to have access, because sometimes children are going to be resentful to you because you are withholding access. And there are going to be aunts and uncles and everyone else who's going to say to their child, your father wanted to be in your life, but hey, your grandmother was pulling strings behind. And you were not, you didn't have a relationship, and children become resentful. So it's an ongoing thing. It's really an ongoing thing and an ongoing fire that we sometimes need to put out, and all of that. In navigate culture, navigate the law, navigate mental health, navigate responsibilities. But ultimately, we want to raise children that are balanced. And are responsible adults.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. I want to pick up on the maintenance issue. Maintenance continues to be an issue, and sometimes it is my belief that sometimes we put money before the relationship with the child. That is why sometimes you find mothers saying, if you are not paying this much, if you are not buying impahla the winter, if umntana ufuna uvula ifridge, ufuna impahla zovula ifridge, kuyabanda ngoku. So the one advice I always give mothers, and I still believe in this advice. If you are so, if you're going through a lot or the most being a single parent, give utata umntana umntana.
Yeah.
I always say to them, if you cannot go back to, if you say, I can't go back to school because now I have a child. I can't do this because I have a child. Now my life is cycling because I have a child. And then you make your child the reason why you cannot do what you would love to do as a parent and as a person. I always say, give the father umntana.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, the reason why we want to hold on to these children is because we are making them our banks.
Yeah.
Is because we want money from the fathers, not necessarily the relationship with the children, but we want that man to give me money, use this child as the reason why he gives me money.
Yeah.
And I have seen in the few times where my friends took my advice and they gave the fathers children, My friends were able to live their best lives. My friends were able to say, I can see the child every month end because I'm at school.
Yeah.
Or instead of me seeing the child, my parents would love to see the child. Could you please make sure that you drop the child off ekaya or kochaye? You know, I'm not there, but that child is still ours.
Yeah.
Two things before you come in. One, would you also agree to this, that men are ready and they are willing to be primary health care or carers to the children? Are you guys willing and ready to take over the parenting role of the child physically? And secondly, are you guys, why is paid maintenance such an issue for men as far as co-parenting is concerned? And also maybe adding to the maintenance issue. You said earlier on that a man should commit. As a father, you should commit to something. If you do not want to pay this maintenance, why don't you say, I will put the child onto my medical aid and I will pay the school, anything education related is mine. Whether there's a trip at school, whether it's a sport thing, it's school fees and all of that. All of those are my responsibilities. But you can take over maybe buying clothes and entertainment and all of that. Do you think that could work?
Yes. Okay. So first things first, primary caregiver, primary custody. I mean, personally, I'm ready, and I know I do it. There are weeks where I take care of my son. I drop him off at school. And I pick him up at school and I go to his school matches. My schedule allows it. My schedule really allows it, and I'm fortunate, I'm privileged that my schedule allows it, and she's very happy. The co-parent is very happy about that, because if she's got assignments, if she needs to travel, if she needs to do whatever, I step in, but I don't wait for that to be really the responsibility for me to do it. I am on the understanding that I want 50-50. I want 2 weeks and she gets 2 weeks. And we're in the same town or in the same city and it's easy. There are times where I do it more. There are times when she does it more. But when you get to that level, you need to clear up your life as a man to say, I'm ready for that. Okay? It's not everyone, because the child will wake up in the middle of the night and be sick. You need to take the child to a doctor, to a hospital. And you need to be able to do those kind of things. And you need to be able to cook for the child. But you see, you cook, you clean, you do all those things. It is part of you. You need to be able to look after yourself. You know, look after yourself and show the child how to look after themselves. So you model it, okay? And unfortunately, some of our sisters date men that can't look after themselves. But, you know, it's unfortunate, you know. So when you look after yourself, you obviously model that. So our brothers, we just need to do that a bit more. And I think a lot of brothers can do that, by the way. Actually, a lot of brothers can do that. The issue of maintenance, why are men feeling aggrieved about maintenance? It's a lack of understanding around it. And we also, sometimes we also don't trust the people that we're giving money to. We don't trust them that they will do what they promising to do with the money. You see, so people need to be responsible to say, when someone takes 1,000 rands and they say they're going to do it for the child, they do it for the child. They don't cut some of it and suddenly they've done their nails, suddenly they've done their hair with some of it. You know what I mean? And or you know, so moving further on that, now how I always look at it is, when I started going back into formal employment, because I used to be an entrepreneur, when I went back into formal employment about 2 years ago, when I joined them, when they said the medical aid forms, here they are, I put my son there. You know, and we've got to do those things to say the child has got to have also a certain level of health care. Here you are, you're driving this German sedan, you're happy to be driving a German sedan, but you've denied your child the right to have a certain level of health care. And all of us, the people who are who don't have enough money are queuing with you at the very same facilities where you could have afforded to afford your child some level of healthcare that you didn't afford them. And so you've got to look at yourself as a man and say, hey, what's wrong with that picture? The other thing that I always say to people is that I want my son to read. So if you want your son to read or your child to read, you have to buy them books and have a book allowance. Annual book allowance, how much is it? A quarter, how much is it? A month, how much is it? And you say to yourself, because I want to encourage this particular habit or this particular value, what am I going to do? So you invest so that you cultivate that particular trait. If I want my child to be a Leonardo Messi or a footballer, I've got to say, let me buy that soccer ball. Let me buy those boots. Let not other people run after me about that. So you've got to look at your child and say, what do I want to cultivate out of this child? And you talk to the co-parent and you say, co-parent, this is what I want to cultivate out of this child. And luckily, if you only have like one child with the co-parent and maybe the co-parent doesn't have other children, it normally is easy. But obviously, if it's other children as well, you've also got to think about that. If you're having you have a responsibility of 1 out of 3, you know, or you have 1 out of 3. You need to think about how do you spread the love amongst all those children because they're all siblings. So we need to move towards past the point of being resentful. If you think your co-parent is irresponsible with money, find a way of saying, I will come and I will drop off what you need. I will buy and I will drop off those things that you need. But you've got to be absolutely committed. And you've got to say to yourself, in a month, in a day, in a week, in how much time am I going to dedicate to parenting? And you've got to step up. And if we don't step up, it's easy for people to point fingers at South African men and say, we're irresponsible, we're this, we're that. Let's step up and let's do those things. And let's help each other in terms of stepping up. If some of us don't see the staircases, we're stepping up. Let's hold each other and give each other a kind word to say, hey, Mona, you're going to miss a step there. That's not how you do it, Wabon. This is not how you do it. And we give each other a kind word and we do what ought to be done. You are on mute, Slido.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much. I don't want to miss a question that Ms. T raised on the Zoom chat. And she says, how to deal with an ex who has access to his kids and he decides not to maintain them. Folks, it is tiring to run around and take each other to court just to get babsel. And the other question is from Umkulu. Umkulu Are, why give money and not buy things yourself as a man? And I'm not sure if Ms. T wants to elaborate, because what do you mean by maintenance? Like we said, if each of you has set responsibilities, you know, then there's no need for the father to give you money because he is doing whatever he needs to be doing, and you are also doing whatever you need to be doing. So maybe if she wants, she can explain, but if not, it's also okay. You can just use what we have.
Yeah, I think we've dealt. Yeah, I think we've dealt with Ms. T's question. I think Nkulu Makanya has a comment or a question. I see him waving.
Okay, he can comment.
Okay.
Nkulu, please come in. You can raise your comments. You can unmute yourself.
Oh no! I was just saying, I don't think giving money is necessary. I mean, why can't you just buy stuff for yourself, and just take it to the parent, and then life goes on? Yeah. What is this obsession with please send money? You know, I mean, I don't think you could ever have enough money. So just buy. People must tell you what is needed, and then buy and drop it off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would mind, like, do you want me to go back to the WhatsApp calls? Not the WhatsApp calls, to our Facebook comments, because people are very busy on Facebook.
Oh, okay.
No Dushuza Kamlimi are so informative. I wish fathers would put their children first and leave the politics aside, because sitwele as single mothers balwela ujola nathi.
Yeah.
Oh, this is not true. And Madimeja is also one of our fellow senior guilders.
Yes.
Madimeja, I'm not going to read your first comment, because it's not the reason why. Your next comment, however, we need to hold each other accountable as men. You are agreeing with Mandla. Silumko Uri, I wish each and every parent would put the child first.
Yeah.
Mukebe, Jacqueline Muremi, our listening ear helps a lot rather than being judgmental as sisters and brothers.
Yeah.
I think most of them are just concurring with you. Osi Sodushuza also says, Silumko Nzube, so sad. Some take advantage, especially when they know your brother is much younger and your father is no more. As a mother, you get to a point where you get weary of fighting and channeling your energy towards being physical, emotionally, and financially available for your child.
Yeah.
Umakandalo, one of our own, says, I wish fathers would understand that money does not raise a child. On the same light, I agree with the brother that if and when the father avails themselves in any other way besides financially, honestly, let them, because honestly, money is not everything needed in the child's wellness. And the last one from Usilumgo, relationship with the child first, money will come easy. Let fathers be primary caregivers too if situations allow.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Quite a mouthful from everyone.
Woo! Yeah. I think, because we are also obviously on a page of a church, I think it's also responsible to say that as the Wesley Guild and as the church, what is our role in reuniting families? Because there's a lot of hurt. There's really a lot of hurt. There's a lot of damage, because life can be a lot. And when life is a lot, we just need to go slightly further than just a listening ear and just prayer only. I love prayer. I really love prayer. But we need to go further than that. We need to have mechanisms as churches. And we sit in quarterly meetings. We sit in leaders meetings. We sit in cells, in classes. And we ought to talk about how do we make sure that we rebuild broken families and broken relationships where they are. Because you find people as old and as older than me who really have a deep sense of hurt about the absence of their fathers and what their mothers did. Because even if you're a present parent, it doesn't mean that you're the good one, eh? You can be present, but your presence could mean that you're doing damage. So as the church, let's think about how do we make sure that we facilitate and we shine the light on ensuring that we are having families that are healthy. And we start with our leaders. We hold our leaders accountable. I have seen a lot of the times in the church, and this is not me being spicy, but this is me being realistic. I've seen a lot of irresponsibilities where we let people, we don't hold people responsible to say, be a responsible leader. Look after your children. We know that you have children in this circuit, in this district. We know. Yeah. And we keep quiet. And we don't talk about these things. And the painful thing is that when we normally talk about these things, we normally talk about them as umgosi. We don't talk about them from a prayerful point of view and say, now that we know that Mandla has a child in a certain district, how are we going to make sure to say, let's hold him accountable and say, hey, chief, do what you ought to do for the sake of their child. So as a church, let's hold people accountable, but let's promote all of that in the right spirit.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I now want, it is 7:15, and I'm not going to rush this conversation. We will finish when the Spirit leads us to finish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ahmed Madla, you mentioned that you are a man of prayer. You are a prayerful man, and I know that from experiencing you. There's one thing I want to agree with you on. There is a motto. There are two mantras that I live by. The first one is live and let live.
Yeah.
The second one is ora et labora.
Yeah.
Which means prayer while you work. Prayer alone does not solve anything. Yeah. Work alone does not solve anything. So these two things have to be used together. So you have to pray for your child, but also you have to be responsible to your child in order for your child to be a good person. I want us to talk about daddy issues.
Yeah.
We come into relationships with people who have daddy issues, right? Both men and women, because maybe their fathers did not do right by them or whatever reason. And then now that relationship falls apart, and then you have children. You do not know how to be a good father to your children because you yourself do not know what that looks like.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, how do we now avoid our children falling into the same traps that some of us fell into?
Sure. We normally don't see it. We normally don't see it. The very thing that we're running away from, we normally don't see it, that we are recreating it. Yeah. We are recreating that cycle. And this so-called issue about daddy issues, it's not all fathers when they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s are going to apologize about why they were absent. A lot of us, when we are confronted about some of the things that we have done, we want to explain them away and not realize that there's pain. And some of these generations that have come before us are generations where that level of accountability, you know, you don't ask your elders. But we might get some apologies and some acknowledgements. In some parts, we might not. So it's a difficult part to navigate where you have parents who don't acknowledge what they've done or what they shouldn't have done. But I always go back to the issue of saying, let's go for professional help. Let's look up as much help as we can. Let's look for information. I mean, I sometimes, when I want certain topics and I want to understand deeply, the internet is you just do a desktop search and you read up about certain issues, you see certain sources, and you hear a perspective from other people as well. I am not saying that that is perfect, but if you can't go professional and your parent that was not in your life did not acknowledge what they needed to have done, you know, we need to keep looking for healing for ourselves and encourage that healing. And I cannot fathom having a parent that rejects you or a parent that doesn't do what they need to do. The level of hurt that causes is unimaginable. And as a result of that, sometimes we don't know what to do as well. So let's acknowledge that sometimes we don't know what to do, because sometimes parenthood and fatherhood is overwhelming. So if you're starting from scratch, you didn't see it elsewhere, acknowledge that you don't know and speak to other people and say, hey man, how do you become a father? I mean, I don't know how to do this. And we need to have a conversation sometimes as men about, oh, chief, you don't know how to. Okay, here's a child. Oh, okay, what do children look for? Okay, how do children, their mannerisms, you know, you've got to have structure with children, for instance. You've got to have discipline, but you've also got to have fun and you've got to communicate. So we need to also be honest about not knowing where to start. And a lot of, sometimes, you know, when you give, I've seen this so many times when someone is carrying a child and they pass on the child, and there is this man who's just holding the child and they don't know what to do. But sometimes parenthood and fatherhood can be like that. You get passed on a child, you go to the hospital. I mean, I remember Brenda's Clinic 2009. We went in there, the two of us, we came out with somebody new and we're like, hey, who are you? Where do we start? And sometimes, you know, like you're going through it, maybe you meet them, they're 12, they're 14, or they're 10, whatever. You're meeting them and you don't know, but sometimes you don't know how to do it. So you've got to be honest. And you know, the other thing is that also need to listen to the children.
Yeah.
Hear the voice of the child, you know, and see the world. You know that Stimela song, See the World Through the Eyes of a Child. Yeah. You've got to see the world through the eyes of a child, and you've got to say, okay, what would I do? And you know, sometimes the child really might want ice cream on a Saturday morning. They might just want ice cream as breakfast. And you've got to say to the child, yes, I want to see the world through your eyes, but we don't wake up with ice cream. We wake up with a certain level of breakfast, and you start your steps, but you talk to other people to say how to become a parent and how to become a father. But the wounds of fatherhood or of absent fathers, those wounds, I mean, you're going to see it. And I'm preempting Father's Day. You're going to see it. On social media, hey, there is going to be tears on social media on Father's Day, because we are not doing the work around the year in terms of pushing positive parenting, particularly by ourselves. And you see a lot of hurt and resentment from the mothers and then from the children as well. So we've got to work back the level of faith that people must have in us. We've got to earn it back and be trusted. Reska pusha, you know, and I mean, we normally say you can't. What is this term? You can't. What do they call this thing, Barry? What is this term that they use? You
don't ask me. I'm a new parent. I don't know anything.
When kids are sitting with someone that is not their parents, what is it called? Babysitting. You can't babysit. Yeah, you can't babysit your own kids. You're parenting them.
No, yeah.
Yeah, you're parenting them. And a lot of people sometimes people babysit their own children because they think, no, it's someone else's problem. It's not mine. It's someone else's thing. And the truth of the matter is that this challenge that we're having is a blessing. It's really a blessing, and we ought to take it as a blessing. And really protect the blessing. And because we are stewards. And let's be responsible stewards to these children.
Sure. Thank you so much, Abuti. I think another thing that I think as co-parents or whoever finds themselves co-parenting, the one thing I think you should do is to be patient. Yeah. First of all, be patient with yourself. Yeah. That you have never been in a situation where you had to co-parent. Yeah. You know, be patient with the child, that the child also is trying to navigate these murky waters of now living in the one house and then 2 weeks later living in another house, or every weekend the child gets shipped elsewhere, or the child gets moved or interchanged, go petrol stationing, you know, or sometimes we don't even want to see each other, that we have other people fetching our child and exchanging the child on our behalf. And I like the word you use when you say positive parenting. Co-parenting, like any other parenting, it has to be positive parenting, but more so when you're co-parenting, that you are not in every day in the life of a child. How do you spoke about accountability by fellow men. Yeah. With us as women, we do a lot of coffee dates, milkshake. We do milkshake dates with our child now. We used to have milkshake Fridays.